All right, so if y'all want to just kind of continue this on from what we did yesterday, because it's a really short section for what we've got to do. So um, just this is a continuation of the notes from yesterday. So this is not new notes, it's just continued. So because yesterday was what, 11? I think that 111. Okay. So this is just number 11 continued because it's a really short section for what we've got to do for this thing. But this one is the only thing we're going to do is division. All right, now with division, it's not really like the old long division. This is more like a fraction. So you're gonna have something like this. So when we're talking about division, this is what we're really talking about that it's gonna look like. All right, here's the one catch. Here's the one thing that they talk about with division. Because it's imaginary numbers, that if it's going to be in simplest form, you cannot have I in the denominator. Because if you try to start adding and subtracting complex numbers, I is weird and it's just not easy to work with. So that basically that's all right. If we're going to do any kind of operations with fractions that are complex numbers, we want to rewrite it so that there's not complex numbers in the denominator because it just makes things really hard to start adding and subtracting these things. So what we're going to do, so to eliminate I in the denominator, we multiply the fraction. And when we say multiply the fraction, we mean top and bottom, and numerator and denominator. And I'm just going to say top and bottom just because it's shorter than saying numerator and denominator. By the conjugate of the denominator. Okay, so the division problem is really actually just a multiplication problem. Just like when you do division of fractions, it's really not division. You keep change flipping, you make it multiplication. Same thing with complex numbers. It's really not a division problem, it's really a multiplication problem. Okay, now, and depending on the numbers, we know the bottom part's always going to be just a number. The top part depends on the numbers there. So that one, it may be one of those things where you're basically going to have a problem that you're going to work out with the top that might have a short answer, it might have a longer answer. We don't really know until we work through this thing. All right, so here's what we've got. Let's take that same example we've got here. And again, to simplify it, what we're going to do is we're going to multiply by 5, not minus 2i, but 5 plus 2i. All right, here's where if you know your shortcuts, this is where it's great for the bottom part, because if we know the shortcut on the bottom, it's going to be the first number squared plus the second number squared. Five squared is 25. 2 squared is 4. So that's going to be 29. Okay, now, and if you don't use the shortcut, then you're just going to have to do the full method because you're going to have to do 5 minus 2i times 5 plus 2i. You're going to do that, that, and that, and that, and then you're going to get 25 plus 10i minus 10i minus 4i squared. And then you're going to simplify it because these are going to cancel each other out. and then eventually you get to 29. Okay. So if you know the shortcut, this is going to be a huge help because you get to do just the first term squared plus the second term squared. Or sorry, let's do first number and second number because it's not necessarily the I that you're going to square. You're just going to square the number itself. All right. If you don't do the shortcut, then again, you're going to have to do the full method, and then you're going to have to work this out to kind of simplify it to eventually get you to the same number that's here. So if you can get the shortcut for these, that's going to be great. All right. For the top part, there is no shortcut for the top part, for the numerator. So for the numerator, we're going to put both of those in parentheses, and we're just going to have to work that one out because there is no shortcut for the top. We just got to, some people like to say plug and chug. You're just going to plug in the numbers and you're going to chug through the work so you can get to the answer what's here. All right, so we got 3 times 5, 3 times 2. So that's 15 plus 6i. We got negative 4 times 5, and then negative 4 times 2i. So that's plus 20i plus 8. And just remember, when you do I times I, you do get I squared there. Okay, first term, nothing with it. Second term, you've got 6 plus 20, so that's 26i. And again, anytime you get I squared, that's a negative 1 that you're going to replace it with. So that's 8 times negative 1, so that's negative 8, which means the top is going to be 15 minus 8, which is 7 plus 26i. Okay, and our denominator was 29. Okay, now here's where with Math Excel, I don't like some of the answers because what you should do is, because Math Excel should let you leave this answer like this sometimes it doesn't. What they want you to kind of go ahead and should have you go ahead and do is think about breaking this number up like this, because if you can simplify this fraction or this fraction, you have to go ahead and simplify it. In that case, nothing simplifies. So that would be okay there. So they should let you do either one of those two answers. Daniel? Did I get your question, Daniel? No? Okay. All right, let me show you one that does actually simplify. So you can see that one, and we'll see. That may be all we get today because we're going to have a mass exodus as soon as we get through that. Everybody okay there? Any thoughts or questions? Okay. I'll make the second one a little bit easier on the top anyway. All right, so let's go with 4 over 7 plus I. Okay, so what we're going to do, again, we've got the complex numbers on the bottom, so we're going to multiply it by 7 minus I. Okay, and again, technically that's 1i that's here. So if you do the shortcut, it's the first number squared plus the second number squared. So that's 49 plus 1. So the denominator is going to be 50. And you can't see that because it's off the edge screen. There we go. Okay, so again, the denominator, if they give you that one and tell you to simplify, you get to use the shortcut. First number squared plus the second number squared. And don't worry about the signs because, again, it's going to be minus a negative when we plug in the I squared. So it's always just first number squared plus second number squared. All right, top part, a little bit easier on this one. It's just 4 times 7i. So that's 28 minus 4i. Question?
We're doing I squared, right?
Yes.
So I squared would be -1.
Yes. So if we did the full method here, we'd have 49. You'd have the minus 7i and the plus 7i, which would cancel each other out. And then you're going to have minus I squared. Yeah. So I squared is -1. So when you do minus a negative, that will make it a positive. And that's the reason we get through the plus shortcut, because it's always going to be a minus number. And then when you put the I squared in there, it's always going to be a negative. So it's always going to be a minus a negative. So it will always be a positive. No. Okay. Okay, so this one, top was a lot easier. Numerator was a lot easier because it's just 28 minus 4i. So we can kind of skip that one here and go to the answer that's 28 minus 4i. Okay, now this is one of those answers, if you leave it here, it's not going to count it correct, because there is some simplifying you can do here. Because if you take 28 over 50 and 4 over 50, you can divide both of these fractions. 28 over 50, you can make that, divide both by 2, make it 14 over 25. And the 4 over 50, same thing, you can divide it by 2, so you can make it 2 over 25.
Shouldn't it be 2 I over 25?
Yes, and we got the I right there.
Okay.
Yep.
And should the I be in the numerator, or should it just stay like off to the side?
I think to be on the safe side, just put it over to the side there.
Okay.
You can put it in the numerator and be okay, but just to be on the safe side, yeah, I would say just put it over here on the side for that part. Question?
Wait, sorry, where did you get the 14 and the 2 from?
Oh, that where we got 28 and 50, that you can divide both of these by 2. And then same thing here, you can divide both of these by 2. So that if you've got that, if that was your only answer you had, if your answer was 28 over 50, just think about that being like a regular fraction, that you can simplify that and divide everything by 2. And then same thing with the 4 over 50. Okay, so that's your complex numbers doing your conjugate with this thing. One last thing that we'll show you here real quick. And then everything else we'll pick up with it on Monday, because this is kind of leading up to one big thing we're going to do Monday, and a small thing we'll do on Tuesday. That occasionally, and I don't know if we'll see in these or not, but this is something that sometimes they're kind of leading up to. They may ask you to factor and use I in your answer. Okay, again, this is going back to that question somebody asked me earlier in the week. Because remember, if your answer, if it was x squared minus 81, we can make that x plus 9 and x minus 9, right? And then somebody asked me, they were like, what if it was a plus in the middle? What do we do? And I was like, all right, hold on, because we'll get back to that one. Because this is what we did a little earlier in the week. If I can spell earlier. Okay, so if it's minus, it's just x plus the number and x minus the number that you got with it squared. If it's a plus, it's almost the exact same thing, but you're going to do one thing different. If it's a plus in the middle, you got to make both of these numbers imaginary. So minus, it's whole numbers, or sorry, real numbers. If it's a plus in the middle, the only way you can factor it is make them imaginary. Okay. Again, if you went back and did the full method, you would see that, again, the plus 9ix would cancel the minus 9ix. And then at the end, you're going to have a minus 81i squared. But because of the I squared, then you go from that one. Now, that's one of those things, if we're doing some of these, I'll have to tell you that, in this case, look, use I in your answer. I'll have to kind of give you a hint, because sometimes you may get to this one and you go, there's no way we can factor x squared plus 81. And that would be one of those things where more than likely I would give you a multiple choice question on that one, just because if I don't, it's not really fair because with whole numbers and real numbers, there's not any real numbers you can use to factor the thing. So I'd have to kind of give you some clue that you're going to do imaginary there. So I think that one would have to be a screaming multiple choice kind of question. Because if not, it's not really. If you just talk about using real numbers, it's not possible. It has to be imaginary numbers. So kind of a trick question almost in a way for that. Okay, we got like 1 minute till everybody's packing up and leaving.